Welcome back to another Charlotte Legacy League where we have Food Chain versus Yorion, Death and Taxes. A huge thank you to the Patreon supporters who are helping the league and YouTube channel. If you would like to become a supporter, please click on the link in the show notes. Both players have kept 7, and Dan's going to be on the play. Dan's on Food Chain, the same list that he was on for our players tournament that the coverage started for on Monday. So you can check out his list in the show notes, as well as you can check out him playing Food Chain against a different opponent in round 1 of the players tournament. That will be linked to the card that's in this channel, and then also probably at the end of the video as well if you want to check out some more Food Chain action. So got a pretty decent start from both players here. Looks like Ponder from Dan on his turn 1, and then Connor's going to try and sneak in an Aether Vial, getting a Force of Will, which is pretty traditional for any blue deck, not wanting Death and Taxes to run rampant with that Aether Vial. Especially Food Chain, Connor can really only react at instant speed if he has that Vial out to combat Food Chains running in the main deck. One, Learn of the Third Path, 4 Skyclave Apparitions are his main removal spells for the Food Chain itself kind of thing. Creature removal suite's not really that great. Dan is playing a Brazen Borrower, 4 Furies, 2 Murktides, and 3 Questing Beasts. So the Food Chain deck has a pretty decent Delver Shell built around it, as well as a combo kill, which is something that we see pretty regularly here in Legacy at this point. Is your deck can't just do one thing, it has to do multiple things to even remotely be viable in the current meta. So that's where we are right now in Legacy 2024. And Connor did play out a Spirited Labyrinth, and Dan flashed in the Ice Cream Quaddle, as you can see there. Dan does land a Food Chain, so the namesake of the deck is in play at the moment. Now all he needs to do is find a Squee or a Miss Hollow-Griffin, and he is well on his way. Looks like Connor goes for swords, and Dan is going to sack it. Nope, he's just going to gain 1 life off of that Swords to Plowshare. So we'll see what he has for his next turn. Maybe he has a Squee, maybe he doesn't, but we'll take a peek here and see. Looks like he's got a Lightning Bolt for that Spirit of the Labyrinth for Connor, and he's in pretty good shape here. He's getting ready to play a Murktide as well. I believe it's only going to have 2 or 3 counters on it. It's 3 counters it is, and then Connor's going to follow that up with a Force of Will almost instantly, keeping Dan's side of the board clear. That way he can not use the Food Chain to just go nuts kind of thing. So Connor's going to buy that Yorion, pass it back over. Not much happening there on Connor's side. Looks like he has 1 more Swords to Plowshare in his hand. We'll see what Dan finds off of this whatever he's casting, which is going to be, I Manipulate Fate. Connor has to read the card too, just like we had to in game 1. It allows him to search his library, exile 3 cards from his library, and then draw a card. So what it really does is it puts Squee into the graveyard, it puts Miss Hollow-Griffin in the grave, or into exile, Miss Hollow-Griffin in exile, and then another Squee into exile. And then if Dan has 1 more land, which he doesn't have right now, next turn if Dan has anything as a payoff from the Food Chain. We've seen Hydroid Crisis before out of a deck like this, but Connor being very cautious to tap down the double red mana, so he can't cast the Squee, and we'll see if he finds anything else to go with off of this. So nothing this turn. Looks like it's just going to be some draw goes here, since neither player can really do anything at the moment. Connor's going to keep him off of red mana to keep that Squee from coming down. Another draw go from both sides, and any minute now Dan should be able to break this open. He did find a 1 mana there, so he's still down 1 as well. Another Spirit of the Labyrinth stopping Dan from casting Brainstorm or anything like that. Fetch, so we've got some red mana going here, and then looks like it's going to be a Seek the Beast. So he's going to flip over a Brazen Borrower and a Xenothrop. I think that's a Zonanthrop, maybe? I'm not entirely sure. I mispronounced this the other day people razz me about it, and now I'm still don't know how to pronounce it. I did look up what it is though from 40k Warhammer, and it looks like a Zerg or something, kind of thing. Apparently, it's a pretty crazy thing in the Warhammer lore, I should say. That's their entire body is energized by psychic force, so it's pretty neat. I'll link this wiki page down in the bottom for anybody who wants to actually learn about whatever the fuck that thing is and or is called. But it looks like we've got the druid coming out, and then squeeze can now be cast. Now he has an infinite mana combo, and he can use that Xenothorpe. If you've been enjoying our content, please be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Welcome back to game number 2. Both players have kept 7. Connor will be able to play this time. Looking at the sideboard from both players, I think the only thing that really helps Connor in this is going to be Council's Judgments, and that's really about it out of his sideboard. Surgical Extraction doesn't really do anything unless he's able to kill the food chain and then surgical it, but then he still has to worry about the tempo plan as well. Coming from Dan's side, it's like not too much actually works against Connor either. Maybe an EE, potentially Collector Oofs, turning off Vials, Jeets, and or whatchamacallits, any of his equipment artifacts that he has in the deck. But realistically, this isn't a deck that, this is a match that really either deck plans to play against, I guess. Food Chain is going to be just trying to go faster, and Death and Taxes doesn't have a lot of interaction for it once the combo is on the board and rolling. And then for Connor, I spoke to him after the match. He told me that this match is pretty much unwinnable just because of how fast Food Chain moves, as well as the creature removal suite, as well as it being a combo / tempo deck as well. So we'll see how that finishes playing out in the rest of the game. We've got a Food Chain here with on the stack with the Swords of Plowshare hitting the Ice-Fang Quaddle here. So, side note, you'll notice that the way life changes are done by hand right now because for whatever reason the Stream Decker crashed in the middle of this match. But Connor is tech savvy enough to work through that problem for us, so he's manually entering the life totals at the moment. So see what else we've got here. We've got a Skyclave Apparition, which is something we talked about in game 1, being able to handle that food chain and get it off the board. So Connor was able to take advantage of putting that out early before Dan could cash in on the food chain, especially since there's a squee in exile, as well as there's 2 red mana, 4 total mana in play. We've got a big Murktide coming out here. I think it's probably going to be maybe a 4/4 or a 3/3. Yeah, it's only a 4/4, so 1 counter on the Murktide. But on the board right now, we've got 7 power, and Connor's just staring at what's going on. Plays as a Gonjo, swords the Murktide, pushing Dan back up to 19 life. And then it looks like we got a Stoneforge coming out as well. So able to use the mana efficiently, as well as to keep one open to tap down. So we'll see a tap down on, looks like the basic island there, or maybe I think that's a forest. So basic forest. So Food Chain can't come out this turn unless he has another basic forest. So we'll see an attack for 3 from the illusion that came off of Skyclave Apparition that exiled the Food Chain. And back over to Connor's turn. He does have a Batter Skull in his hand, and it looks like a Cauldra, maybe. I know he has a Cauldra. I'm not sure if he has the Batter Skull or not. But he's just working through his mana here to see the most efficient way to do it. That way he can leave up the Rishadan Port or the Wasteland. So it looks like he values the Rishadan Port more. The Cauldra does come into play, swinging over 5 damage to Dan, and we'll see what happens now. Definitely tap down on that green source, trying to keep the food chain off the board. Ice Bank Quaddle comes in at the upkeep, or not upkeep, but untap step. Or yeah, it would be the upkeep. So untap, upkeep, brings that in response to the Schadenport tapping down the forest. So got a blocker out now, as well as we still have 3 damage that we can do with the illusion. And we got a squee coming out as well at the pre-combat phase. And then yep, there's the attack. So in a turn, Connor's going to use that Karaka, send that squee back to Dan's hand, which does set Dan back an extra turn if he were to find the food chain here, because Connor can tap down the forest as well as keep returning the squee at end step of Dan's turn if he chooses to play it. Now once the food chain and the squee have both resolved on Dan's side of the board, it's basically infinite mana. So Connor's just taking another moment to see how he wants to handle the mana situation. If he wants to wasteland and then port down the forest, knowing that another forest could come off of that prismatic vista. So it looks like he wants to use that wasteland. He's just trying to decide where, if he wants to burn it now or wait for maybe a tropical island from Dan. Choose to play the Thalia, and then we'll just tap down with the Rishadan Port, which does basically the same thing. Oh, okay, we're not tapping down with the Rishadan Port. So it does basically the same thing as Wastelanding by playing the Thalia, because it does restrict mana by 1 more. Connor being patient, not Wastelanding right away, and also not porting either. It looks like he has the mana up for the Batterskull that's in his hand. An attack from Dan will put Connor down to 11. Connor chooses not to activate the Stoneforge to, I guess, to give any indications of what's to come. Then plays down the squee. Connor's just gonna send it right back again. In step, we'll see an activation on the Stoneforge Mystic into the Batterskull, and he does have enough mana since he didn't wasteland. He could equip that Batterskull to the Cauldron, make it a 9/9 Trampler with lifelink first strike, with only a Quaddle out, and he attacks with everything, so that's 12 damage coming across, and that'll do it for game number 2. If you've been enjoying our content, please be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Welcome back to game number 3. Dan is on the play. Both players have kept 7. Dan leading off on a Volcanic and a Ponder. Pretty much any blue deck standard opening hand. It's basically like chess. If I knew what that actual opening was in chess, I could say it. I think it's like pawn to like d4 or some shit like that. I don't know. Maybe some chess people know better than I do and can tell me what the most popular opening is in chess. So we'll go from there. We've got a Vial coming from Connor, and again, much like a mirror of game number 1, we're seeing a Force on the Aether Vial, this time pitching the Manipulate Fate. So Dan will have to find another way to get his creatures into exile. Alright, we got a draw here as well. Fetch Misty. It's a Misty Rainforest, and he's going to pass back over to Connor. Maybe we can get some action going this turn so we don't have so many draw goes. He did bring in the Council Judgment that we discussed in game number 2 post board. And Connor is going to pick up a Cauldron Complete. So we got a Questing Druid into... Well, we got to Seek the Beast into another Questing Druid and into a Tropical Island. So Baby Expressive Iteration at the end step, being able to take advantage of playing both of those cards if he wants this turn. But I don't think he does. It looks like he has a Tasha's... Or, that's not Tasha. It's Tishana. I think it's Tishana. I think it's Tishana's. Yeah, Tishana's Tidebinder in his hand, which has been seeing a lot of play in Modern, and I believe just won the SCG event with Fish, and Connor's going to activate that Stoneforge, and then Tishiana's Tidebinder is going to counter that ability. Also, as long as the Tidebinder is in play, he cannot activate another Stoneforge Mystic. So that's a pretty neat effect as well, because it countered it, and then it revokes it from being used from here on out. So, got a Questing Druid in play now. It's not very often you see that come into play. An attack for, I believe, 3 or maybe 2. Let's see what that Tidebinder is. It is a 3/2. Jesus Christ, it's a Hull Breacher with a different thing on it. So yeah, an attack for 3 from the Tidebinder, and it looks like Connor's just going to take it. Schadenport could turn off the green mana for now. It does make it suffer a little bit for Connor. We'll see another Stoneforge coming into play. I believe that the Tidebinder still turns that off. Let me just read that card to make sure. Yeah, when Tidebinder enters the battlefield, counter up to 1 target activated or triggered ability. If an ability of an artifact, creature, or planeswalker is countered in this way, that particular permanent loses all abilities for as long as the Tidebinder remains on the battlefield. So one of the Stoneforge Mystics doesn't work, but the other one does, which explains why he utilizes all of his mana as opposed to leaving anything up to activate the Stoneforge, because one Stoneforge is available to be activated, the other one is not available to be activated. So that's a pretty cool thing to know. Also, we'll need to add in some Tidebinder tokens to the stream. That way we know when it comes into play what it's targeted and what's turned off by it, in case we end up to another position like this where we have 2 Stoneforge Mystics out, and if one of them were to be lightning bolted, the correct one were to be killed, so the other one could not be activated. So yeah, interesting. Okay, what else do we have going on here? We had a fetch of some sort, and then I have no idea. So, brainstorm. Okay, and we got a lightning bolt on the good one, I assume. Missed 2 triggers. Oh no, maybe we didn't. We did miss 2 triggers on that. One being from the brainstorm, the other being from the lightning bolt. So we're going to see an attack for 5 coming over, and we'll see how Connor can come back from this particular position. We got a Field of Ruin, Council Judgment in hand, 3 mana, Skyclave Apparition. If that doesn't get countered, he can hit the Tidebinder. Yep. And now the Stoneforge Mystic's back on, and he's going to pass it back over. All right, so Stoneforge is live again, the Tidebinder being gone, and then we have a port on the green mana. Dan finds another green mana off that Taiga, and I wonder if he has Food Chain here. If he has Food Chain, he might be able to just go off from here. I don't know if he has anything else. He has Food Chain and a Squee. He could definitely activate and go from there. So we'll see what he's got. 3 mana coming out. And there's an Imperial Recruiter trigger on the Questing Druid, and swing it over for 3 here. Connor tapped out, can't really activate anything. All right, let's see what we got here. So with that in play, he could potentially, well, I mean, even if he Field of Ruin, he can't Field of Ruin, and because he still has a green mana available, a green basic in his deck, and Connor knows that. So Spirit of the Labyrinth, activate on the Stoneforge potentially, and swing over. Just working through what he's got with his Eva Elfie grip on his cards. If anybody isn't sure about that, please be sure that you're 18 and older before you look that up. And then, all right, we've got a Batterskull here. We'll pass back over. This is the turn right here. is maybe it. Got a recruiter. Got shit to sacrifice. We've got the food chain. Alright. Sacrifice that. Recruiter. Make 4 mana. And he's got the Xanathorpe again. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. If you've been enjoying our content, please be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below.